to get this through. But it was really in memory of a colleague of mine, a student, Amrita Patel, who worked on migration for a very, very long time. From 2006, both of us started, and we did do a lot of work on terms of not only in Odisha, but also in the context of garment workers in Tirupur, what is happening. And mm, then also in climate change, a lot of work was also done. So it was in her memory that we thought that since there was not much talk about women and migration, that we would like to do this. Uh, Today the situation has changed as we see, and then what we had done in those years. We cannot think the same way as we did then. There's a lot of change, and none of I'm sure all of you who have joined this panel today in the discussion have ever experienced something like this. The pandemic that is there, the challenges that is faced by the whole of humanity. It is not one nation, it is not one border, it is not one coast, it's across countries. And this is something that where 50% of the humanity who are women, how they are being affected is something that is still not a part of our general discourse all over. What makes the panel discussion important is that we cannot predict the end of the pandemic. We don't know what is going to happen. We don't know what we are going to do. But we are faced with the unprecedented crisis, which has not only economic impact, that is there, but also at the same time, it has social impact, which has always been part of women's lives as migrants or women who are left behind. When we talk of migration and women, we don't only talk about women who went as migrants, they went as part of families, but also they were also, number of them were left behind when males migrated. And in many places in India, that is what has happened. Now, what is happening to them when the men cannot come back? There is no food, there is a lot of food insecurity, and these are issues that are still not being taken up. The women and migration situation, therefore, is a very complex issue. And besides the issues of food insecurity, there's a lot of, I think, information on domestic violence as such during COVID, but we don't hear anything about migration or any kind of violence within the family or in the household. There's a lot of violence as we see today. A lot of people were killed. There were buses that overturned. A lot of people were dying of hunger. But the state, there's a mismatch between their demand and that of the state. I think these are certain things that we need to look at, and where women are concerned. And today we are not only, we have you as eminent panelists who are there to speak, but I'm glad to say that there'll be a lot of students.
I don't want to interrupt, but there are a number of messages on the chat that people cannot hear.
Oh, they're still saying that?
Yes, at least 3
they
messages.
They have to unmute themselves. They have to unmute themselves.
They are not unmute because I have muted them.
Then
you can be muted and still hear. I think you can mute yourself and still hear.
Muting and hearing are not the same. So
yeah, they're not the same. So there shouldn't be an issue.
Okay, so
maybe is nobody able to hear? Can people, those who can't hear, raise their hands? Just so visually we can, because I think some of us are able to hear. Okay, there's, I don't know, I don't see anybody.
Keetisha,
everybody is able to hear, right?
So, Keetisha and somebody, Galaxy 810, cannot hear.
Smita Mohanty raised her hand. One person, okay. I can't see the I can hear now, it's audible, it's clear, some people are saying.
Okay, carry on, please.
Good sound.
Asha, please carry on.
Yes.
Yeah. We are trying at least to see if there is some glitch here, but we haven't seen anything. So I'll just go ahead. I'll finish with this. And I would like Professor Mahanti to go ahead and uh, get the panelists on board on the discussion that we are going to do. And at the end of your talks, there will be a question answer session. We request the people who are joining us to please put your questions in the chat, and we will be looking at all of them. And I hope that the panelists will all take up the question that they think that they can would like to answer. So, Professor Mahanti, I would request you to take over from here. I'll come back later. Yeah.
Thank you very much. You have already mentioned about Amrita. I will only add that we have a small institute called Development Research Institute in Bhubaneswar. Because Vidyut is sitting next to me and she has her computer on, so I think there is some disturbance. We are disconnecting, we'll use one. Amrita was one of the fellows of the institute. She and Asha did the first research projects of DRI and produced 3 research monographs and on migration. And I have requested Asha to come in later to talk about their findings and their relevance to the current context. Well, Asha has also referred to the tragedy of today, the 16 migrant workers killed on the railway track. Yesterday's tragedy was the gas leak in Visakhapatnam. So, and for the last almost 2 months, several tragedies of special kind we have witnessed also, some reported, some not reported. So COVID has come with many tragedies and many challenges. And today we are discussing a very important aspect, in the economy, and I'm sure we will hear from Jayati and others. In the economy, the sector that is most invisible is the migrant labor. And among them, the women are even more invisible. And women, migrant laborers, women who are left behind, women who independently go to work outside. Therefore, we have a very important topic. Very few discussions have taken place on this aspect. And we have a fantastic panel, a memorable panel, really. Has Professor Puspendra joined? Not yet. We have Professor Puspendra, who is the chair and director of the Center for Development Practice, Tata Institute of Social Sciences, the Patna campus, who is also editor of a new journal, Journal of Migration Affairs. It's a 2-year-old, very important journal. Then we have Jayati Ghosh, who is not only an eminent economist, who has kept one stream of thought, alternative thinking at global level through the IDEA network alive, that has kept this debate on globalization alive from the people's perspective, from the workers' rights perspective. And her latest book on demonetization and several articles. The latest paper on global economy and COVID has many issues which other people haven't raised. So welcome, Jayati. We have Saida. Has she joined? Saida? I'm sure
she's having a problem I'm trying to sort out.
Okay, all right. Daniel, has he joined? Umi is today Odisha's most important.
He has joined and
Odisha's most important resource person. Okay. Odisha's most important resource person of migrant labor. Umi was with ActionAid and has worked on migration for over 10 years. We also have a weekly seminar inequalities. Which states are the source states of migrant labor? Where are they going? That shows our economy. And so here today we are focusing on the gender, class, ethnicity, focus on gender. So the inequality dimension that I think so is a way wrong solutions to problems of Dadan labor from Balangir going somewhere, or the Bihari labor going to Punjab, or Ganjam labor going to Surat. These are distress migration. They are not economic migration. Economic migration is fine, perhaps. So perspective of long-term solutions. I think with these issues, I will now invite, has Pushpendra Sahab come or not yet? In that case, I will request Professor Jayati Ghosh to come.
Thank you very much, Professor Mohanty. It's a great privilege to be part of this discussion, and I'm really looking forward to hearing everyone else about it. I just want to highlight a few points to sort of give the economic aspect of this. So I think the first point we have to note is that this is an unprecedented collapse of everywhere. Across the country, rural really stopped economic activity, and that has obviously led to widespread distress, but it has particularly led to severe survival issues. Absolutely, people are now at the margin, are clearly among those who are the worst affected, but there are many across rural India, and those, in fact, who are also permanently in urban India, who are also currently at the margin of survival. So just in terms of this very severe economic collapse, I think that's the underlying context that we have to note. I think the second thing is really that, this is such a massive betrayal of migrant workers. It's an unbelievable betrayal, because what you really told approximately 200 million people in different parts of the country is that we will stop you working. We will stop you from having any access to any livelihood. Whatever you were doing, you're no longer allowed to do. And you will not get any for any period of time. Then we will from to earn your own income, but you have been prevented from going where you will have minimum social protection. And in the interim, you have not been given any access to social protection. The amounts of either food grain or any other income support are so pitiful that they're almost non-existent. So this is very, very unusual. And this degree of betrayal will have consequences, definitely. And this is, I think people are realizing this late, which is why they're doing the opposite kinds of attempts to force migrants to stay by denying them the capacity to leave. But these kinds of very, very severe betrayal will have consequences. Now, we also know that one of the most severe problems today has become the problem of nutrition and food. Now, the issue is often presented as the problem of migrants in general, but we also know that whenever food is short, it is women in a household or in a family and girls who tend to be relatively deprived. And this is so widespread across the country that I don't need to belabor the point. So where there is, in fact, reduced food access, the possibilities of significantly reduced nutrition for women and girls is that much greater. And this is absolutely the case in terms of all the surveys that have been conducted in the last 5-6 weeks among migrant workers, including by the Standard Workers Action Network, and lack of food, lack of nutrition, which is effectively the right to life. It also affects other health concerns. In other words, in the name of improving public health, in the name of protecting the population against the pandemic, we are dramatically reducing their access to other health. And where this is particularly true among migrant women, where access to reproductive health has declined dramatically. We have several cases reported, in fact, by those who are doing surveys and those who are working with the migrants, of women having to deliver at home, women not be able to access antenatal care, women not able to get the minimum kinds of medicine or other nutritional supplements that they need in their period of pregnancy and lactation. And this is a very, very serious issue. Women who are pregnant being forced to walk long distances in the desperate urge to get back home, hundreds of kilometers, when they are actually, because they are fearing for their survival in the urban areas. So what we're going to see now is a very weakened population, and particularly the migrant population, and among them the women in the migrant population are already weakened, and therefore much more likely to be susceptible to diseases like COVID. So nutrition, other diseases, and reproductive health, all these have been attacked dramatically, particularly for women. Things collapses across the board that this decline in remittance incomes is affecting those who are already significantly at the margin of survival. All this matters particularly because all our public policy is migration blind and gender blind, both. Migration blind because your access to services and to your rights are defined by your location. So if you have a ration card, it would be at your place of origin. Your children's schooling would be at your permanent residence, and so on. There's another and worse problem, which is that migration policy is gender blind. The typical breadwinner migrant model, and it's the young men who go out and their wives sometimes accompany them, or they are back at home waiting and collecting remittances. This is actually not a very useful model. We have a very significant proportion that actually all permanent migration are across the city areas. There's also short-term migration for work, periods of 4 months, 5 months, sometimes periods of just 10 days to 2 weeks. Women working in a number of other such activities, women working as itinerant traders, all of which are short-term migrants as women. And the public policy has been generally blind to this. I know that when Zaida was in the Planning Commission, she made a number of efforts to actually incorporate this knowledge of that women are themselves migrants into the public policy, but that has really not been taken up in a big way. What that means is that today, when there is all this discussion about, when there's finally a realization, because of the extreme attack that has been placed on migrants, of the problems faced by migrant workers, at that period, in fact, there's very little recognition of women who have migrated for work themselves, of the male migrants. And there are very specific problems of not just nutrition security, health security, but I would argue physical security of women who are suddenly losing their livelihood, getting displaced, and unable to actually ensure their own protection over this period. Finally, I just want to highlight the point about intersecting inequalities. Of course, gender, but you see, there's gender, and all of these are playing out particularly intensely in the migrant population. We know that many migrants are in different parts of the country, don't actually speak the local language. This has been a big problem in Tamil Nadu, in Andhra Pradesh, in Hyderabad, and language. And therefore, even when assistance is required, they are unable to do the required kinds of either paperwork or other mobilizing of the bureaucracy and officialdom to get watching of those kinds of issues. And then, of course, the fact that everything has been communalized in our country, there is so much prejudice and across the board in all kinds of official activities issues, and women's extreme. Now, these are all in front of us all when we are talking about this in the wider society to keep emphasizing, is that these are people who have built our cities, who are servicing our cities. These are people not just work, their work and their production and none of our economies will collapse beyond any kind of hope. And so I think the extreme dependence of the Indian economy in all its activities, in all sectors, and across urban and rural areas, the extreme dependence of the Indian economy labor has got to be something that we keep driving home, because until those in power recognize.
The last point about the intersecting inequalities, and they're so evident. Now, particularly you highlighted the lactating child and so on. I think we should also see examples of this point about how
thank you, बहुत शुक्रिया मनोरंजन आपका और प्रोफेसर आशा हंस का, प्रोफेसर मोहंती का, और से पहले जयती ने जो बातें की उन्होंने वो बात रखी और आपने उस बात पे आपने और भी टिप्पणी की। मैं तो बहुत खुशकिस्मत हूँ क्योंकि 10 साल प्लानिंग कमीशन में मेरी साथी रही जयती, आप भी रहे प्रोफेसर मोहंती, आशा हंस भी मेरी साथी रही, मगर खास तौर से प्रोफेसर जयती घोष ने फेमिनिस्ट इकोनॉमिस्ट की एक कमिटी ने पूरे 11वीं और 12वीं योजना पे जेंडर लेंस से उसको देखा और तो मैं आपको ये सब बातें, मैं उनकी एक बात लेना चाहती हूँ क्योंकि मुझे यहाँ I have many identities, but you have given me the identity of somebody who's connected with Muslim Women's Forum. तो इस वक्त जो के बारे में आमतौर से नजर आती नहीं है, जैसे अभी जयती ने कहा। तो ये एक तरह से हमारे ये जो इनको हम कहते हैं, ये सबसे कम तरीन और बदतरीन, दिस इज द वोकैबुलरी आई वांट टू यूज वेरी डिलिबरेटली, माइग्रेंट लेबर जो है उनके हायरार्की में वो सबसे कम तरीन और बदतरीन है और सबसे ज्यादा हमारी इकोनॉमी को, जैसे जयती ने कहा, हमारी इकोनॉमी को जो उस वक्त उन्होंने हमारी इकोनॉमी को आज वो ऐसे आज हम मुसलमान माइग्रेंट लेबर्स जो है, और मैं अपनी एरिया में बताती हूँ, मैं जामिया एरिया में रहती हूँ, नेक्स्ट डोर टू शाहीन बाग, next door to the area where it used to be a very multi religious area, अब तो ये ghetto बन गया है मुसलमानों का। तो वहाँ एक मस्जिद है जहाँ माइग्रेंट लेबर को वहाँ ठहराया गया है, और इत्तेफाक से वो जितने माइग्रेंट लेबर हैं वो सब नॉन मुस्लिम्स हैं। जब माइग्रेंट नॉन मुस्लिम लेबर के पास
there are many requests on the chat for you to speak in English because there are many people from around the world.
Oh, okay. I thought it would be a change for me to speak in English. I have a little poetry which I cannot speak in English. Okay. So those are the people that those non-Muslims, Hindus, my neighbors who have been given shelter in a masjid, and this small modest organization, Muslim Women Forum, we are trying to give them food packages. So we know. Similarly, there are in our area, they're giving shelter to and non-Muslim migrants, and interestingly enough, those non-Muslim migrants are staying in a masjid in our area. So that incidentally is what India was all about. Our composite culture, our Ganga Jamni Tehzeeb. Now I was very young. I was just a small kid. Manoranjan talked about Manto and talked about Nandita, who will be coming in. And he was a filmmaker called Khwaja Ahmad Abbas. And that was the first time in 1953 as a small child that I heard about migrant labor. And it was about the migrant labor who went into the tea gardens of Assam. At that time, their bosses were, the tea garden bosses who used to whip them when they went wrong. So I'll just quote 3 lines which are actually written by a very good friend of his called Prem Dhawan and set to music, beautiful music by Anil Biswas. And the 3 lines that have stuck with me all these years since 1953 are, छोड़ छाड़ कर देश को अपने आए देश पर आए. We left our land and we have come to a strange land. छोड़ छाड़ कर देश को अपने आए देश पर आए, पापी पेट ने देखो हमको क्या क्या रंग दिखाए. Our hunger, what has our hunger shown us? Having left our beloved land, we've come to new land. And now the whole scene is playing out that when when think of our home, घर की याद सताए हमसे एक पल रहा न जाए. When we think of our homes, we dissolve in tears. So those
Muslims, non-Muslims, migrant laborers right now. Thank you very much. And of course, those 3 lines from 1953. Thank you very much. I think we'll save Nandita for a little while. Now I can see Professor Puspendra back. You joined late. Welcome, Professor Puspendra. You are the migration expert per se amongst us. Professor Puspendra, I have introduced you already. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm very sorry for joining you late. Let me start with the story from the beginning. We all know that migrants constitute a very large segment of our workforce, but so far they have remained invisible in all discourses on labor. Now, when the 3-week curfew-like lockdown was announced on 24th March, then many migrants, they set out on a long journey to their home, to faraway places. They were walking down to hundreds and sometimes even more than 1,000 kilometers. Now, this has continued till date, and in the process, some 300 migrants have also lost their lives. The optics which their long march created brought migrants to the center stage of the political discourse. And despite several attempts to communalize this discourse and also to put the entire responsibility of fighting with the virus on the people, the migrants particularly have continued to occupy the center stage. Yet, the women migrants have remained invisible in the entire discourse, and that's the reality. And this is despite the fact that the TV images and videos, they frequently show women walking alongside men on roads. And various, say, the interviews which we have seen, but there is hardly any discussion in any of the webinars or even in TV studios or in writings. I've seen very few on women migrants. So migration, even in the time of Corona, has a male face. And that's why I would like to begin by thanking you and Sahans for organizing this webinar on women migrants. Now the question is why these women migrants have remained invisible during this time. One reason is very simple, which we all know, that gender insensitivity, which affects not only our society and media and political institutions, but also our academia. And that has resulted in undermining the productive and both productive and reproductive roles of women. And but this is well known, so I will not discuss this further. But the other reason is that women are involved more in those kinds of work which have remained invisible. For example, domestic help or working as home-based worker in all outsourced industrial say production, also as waste recycling workers and so on. But the disastrous impact of, say, keeping this section of migrants invisible is first, and it's very important for us, say, academicians, is, say, paucity of sex disaggregated data in public domain. After I got the invitation to join this panel, I searched for data at ICMR site, Ministry of Health and Family Welfare site, and also on Google. I wanted to know how many women have been infected, how many women have been actually tested, screened, tested, infected, how many have actually got cured, and how many say women have died because of coronavirus. And I couldn't find sex disaggregated data. Even today, if you go to ICMR site, you don't find. And so, and similarly, I would say that you don't find any data about how many women have been quarantined, how many women have been isolated, and where are they, whether there are, say, separate quarantine centers for women, how many women are in relief centers. So we don't have any data related to all of these. Now, if you you don't have these kind of data, so you would also not know, which you are perhaps you have already mentioned, that how many are pregnant women in these quarantine centers, isolation centers, how many are lactating mothers there, or adolescent girls are there in those centers. What kind of say measures have been taken to provide them even say sanitary say pads? We have no data about all these. And you know, we can just imagine what's the situation of women, those who are walking on the road and without access to sanitary hygiene, the personal menstruation hygiene. And in this regard, when I was trying to find out data about how many women have died, and then I came across one small news item in Bhaskar, and that news item was very important. And that says that the death rate of women in India due to coronavirus is more than that of men. Now, the data which I have seen, and there are, you know, only few countries out of, say, all 200 countries which have been affected by corona. There are perhaps 35 countries which are actually giving you sex disaggregated data on coronavirus infection and death. Now, when I looked at the data of other countries, I found only 3 Asian countries there, Iran, China, and perhaps South Korea. Yeah, 3 countries I saw where they have given data about how many women have been infected, how many males have been infected, and also in death, how many women have died. And I actually was appalled to see that only 2 countries, and you can guess, India and Pakistan, only in these 2 countries, death rate of women have been higher than death rate of men. Okay, I can quote you this data. This Bhaskar News says that of females in India due to this epidemic is 3.1%. I have just forgotten of which date this Bhaskar was. And the death rate of men is 2.6%. In Pakistan, female death rate was 2.8% and male death rate 2.0%. Now we know that genetically, because of the presence of 2 X chromosomes, so women are less susceptible to this infection. We also know that the comorbidities are generally more in men, like smoking, drinking. So they are more likely to get infected, and that's the case everywhere. And they are more likely to die because of comorbidities. If you compare with the data of China, in China, the death rate of women was 1.7%, whereas death rate of men was 2.8%. Just reverse. So the ratio of deaths is 70 to 30, so men and women. We also know that more men are also getting infected, and it's almost the ratio in other countries is the same. Now the question, because we didn't have this data, there is no discourse, public discourse on death rate because of paucity of data. So we have not analyzed why in India more women are dying. There is no article in on ICMR website, no article on any of the institutions which deal with public health issues. There is no article on that. I tried to the extent I could to search data on these issues. So so that's why I'm saying we have actually failed our women migrants, and we have even during this period it has remained with a male face without any female face. Now we can always guess, we can say that, and this guess would not be wrong as far as I understand, because I think because the public health experts or the medical experts have failed us. So now the responsibility is on either activists and the social scientists to explain this gap in death rate and actually the reversal of death rate in India and Pakistan. Professor Jyoti Ghosh has already spoken about this, how women are more affected when there is food crisis in homes. Actually, I think nowadays there is no discussion about how many shelters are running and whether the government is feeding its people or not, because the discourse is gradually shifting on reviving economy. So suddenly we are not discussing much availability of food, and we know that if there is any food crisis at household level, the women are going to be worst affected along with the old age people. We also know that, and then we have the data from National Commission for Women, that the cases of domestic violence has doubled, more than doubled. And now women have more responsibilities. Even the household responsibilities have increased because children are not going to school, the males are all the time there, and they have to live with their abusers 24/7, and they have no recourse to all those, say, the usual help generally they get during other times, normal times. So, and we also know that the most of the care workers, these are women. Even the healthcare workers, most of the nursing staff are women. So what is happening to them when we have less, say, protective gear for our medical staff, when we have no safety gear for our frontline staff like ASA workers? What we are doing to these women, those who are migrants themselves and those who are taking care of migrants. And we have to just, last point is that we have to remember, when we talk about migration, we generally think that women migrate because of say marriage, or they accompany their men. But the data shows in several states, women migrating singly, whether they are married or unmarried, but migrating singly, they have surpassed the number of their male counterparts. So that means this is the issue of female migrants and those who are taking care of these men and female migrants. So that issue must be brought to the center stage in the entire discussion on migration.
Thank you very much, Professor Pushpendra. The absence of gender segregated data is a big problem, and that shows the kind of bias we have. And this piece of information, non-official but very striking information, that more women have died in India and Pakistan than men in the COVID affected deaths. That is something we have to really remember. Thank you very much, and many other suggestions you have made. We must follow them up. Well, we will now move to Nandita Das. I think many people are waiting. Well, Umi will be the last. You know, he will bring us to the grassroots in Odisha. Now, Nandita, please.
Thank you, Professor Mohanty. Well, I mean, firstly, Asha ji called me to this panel. I was wondering why me, because I'm no expert at all like all of you. The reason I said yes is, of course, because I respect many of you who I know and your work, but also to learn. I mean, it's really been educative also, and much has been said. I just want to add a little bit to that. For instance, I live in a locality called Bandra in Bombay, which is a upscale locality. It's one of those more bohemian ones. It's much envied to live here, etc. And every time Bandra is talked about, you know, sort of talk about the fact that it's Hindu, Muslim, Christians. There are very nice old houses. There are new big apartments. recently, when it was some rumors were there that the trains are going to start, and there were, thousands of migrant workers who went to that Bandra station. Nobody thinks of Bandra as a place where there would be migrant laborers, right? And we have completely just cut them out of our consciousness as a society. Even in the way we describe places, areas, I think, firstly, English is such a divider. As we know, education is such a divider, gender is such a divider, religion is, all of these have just added to it, and we have just not realized that they're so low in the pyramid that even though it's in this neighborhood, I'm on various chats with mothers and other people, everybody was kind of shocked that this is happening in Bandra, like Bandra station, and all these people, this is their hub. And like Jayati said in the beginning, which is so right, that it's not that it's only a human rights issue. After all, we, the more privileged people, we forget that our houses are built with them, our house help, and all of the, how we are so deeply intertwined, we have completely forgotten that. So what is happening today, first of all, I don't think we should be shocked. We have ignored many of these issues for so long that it has just sort of surfaced right now, just as we have done with nature. We keep saying, my God, nature is teaching us a lesson. Nature needs to reset. We need to take cognizance of the fact that there is climate change. I think similarly, there is a lot of learning that we have to do in terms of how we have completely ignored the daily wagers, the migrant laborers. We have just thought of it as something that happens on the side, and not given, even in our human rights or even in our work, that kind of a place. They were completely hidden in plain sight, and I think that's why they are. It is time that we actually begin to talk about things that matter beyond the pandemic as well, and focus on it. Coming to women, as we know, are in the lowest sort of ladder of things. Of course, children are even below that because they are more dependent on the adults. And as women, they take care of everything. Today, I got a very interesting message on my chat group. I'm going to read it out. And Jayati, this is not for economists, good economists like you, but it's got an interesting thing that it says: the economy is not closed. Everyone is cooking, cleaning, and taking care of their loved ones. It's just not valued by economists because it's normally unpaid women's work. So I think it is also time to see and look at women not just as victims, but also to have this reminder that women are truly holding up everything. Whether it's the women who are in the villages, and when these men and these workers, they come, what they're doing, women during the travel because they're taking care of their children and all of that, whether in the homes. So everywhere, women are also holding up not just half the sky, but the entire society in many ways. And I think that positive reinforcement is also needed as we, talk about the problems of women. Also, if we see right from a female feticide to female infanticide, all the markers literally from birth to death, what are those issues, whether it's domestic violence. We know during lockdown, women, whether they're on the road or whether they're in the homes, it is becoming very, very difficult. So I think all of us who are working in whichever field on gender issues, it is time to focus on that, because they too are deeply interlinked to the issues of women migrant laborers. These are not in isolation. It is how we look at the issues of women, which is, I think, also surfacing much more. In Indian films, if we see, because even though I'm on the fringes of Indian cinema, but considering I'm sort of representing a little bit of that world, the stories of just common people, not just migrant laborers, but working class people, are just vanishing, like the pages in our newspapers and in our media. We used to have, I remember, at least in good papers, there used to be a whole page on just rural news. Unless something is hugely sensational, we just don't hear anything about it. And our films also, I remember Do Bigha Zameen, for instance, Bimal Roy's film, which talks about migrant laborer played by Balraj Sahni, how he comes to the city, a farmer, and pulls the rickshaw to pay back his debt. At some level, deeply, it still remains one of, sort of a film that I remember so vividly, because it impacted me. When you're really young, you're impressionable, and you're idealistic, you want to change the world. Cinema does have a role to play in creating narratives and creating empathy and challenging prejudices. When you don't show a large group of people and their stories, you are further desensitizing people who are in the decision making places, who are in the media, who are in the academia, because they just don't matter. So I think at many levels we have to do. There are no easy solutions, as we all know, and we just have to be at it. But we have to start seeing the intersectionality of all these issues and realize that nothing really can be taken care of or can be dealt with in isolation. So yeah, I mean, that's what I wanted to just add to the conversation.
Thank you very much, Nandita. This point about the films having forgotten the poor,
yes,
particularly
sadly.
the migrant labor. I think that's a great point. Equally important is your point about whether the what Bandra really represented. We have seen in Surat many times, also during the last 6 weeks, and in many other places, in Chennai, in other places also. What does it represent? Does it represent victimhood or agency? That they have right to work, right to dignity, right to livelihood.
Absolutely.
And therefore, this is the assertion of the dignity. And I think this voice has to be heard. Thank you very much for that.
If I can just add one small thing, because you've made a very important point about dignity. Because in this period, there is a complete loss of dignity. People who have earned by working hard are having to be like beggars, where food and everything is being doled out.
Exactly.
And I'm also working with some of these art and craft communities. They are not just laborers. They have a certain talent, they have a gift, and they have something to offer. And we put them in our homes, and we don't even know their names, because contemporary art is up there, and art and craft and all these wonderful objects, we don't even know the names of the master craftsmen, let alone the women who are actually doing a lot of the work, and they are also losing their dignity. So I think it's very important that in this whole conversation we think about how do we ensure that it's they have a life of dignity. So thank you for bringing that up.
Thank you. Let's move on now to Umi Daniel, who has been, as I said, the most important resource person on Odisha's migration
I've
data.
learned a lot from him as well.
Ground reports. Umi.
Thank you, sir. Professor Asa Hans, Dr. Mahanti, Professor Jayanti Ghosh, and Saida Hamidji, and Nandita, of course, meeting you after a very long time. I think good to see you there. Pushpendra, my friend, we work together.
17 hours.
We work together on various issues. I vividly remember Amrita and my conversation, and I remember her today. And she has just done a study on the women who are actually working in the garment industry in Tamil Nadu. And they're all from Odisha. Young girls were recruited and taken to work in garment industry, completely new, doesn't know that 3 months training government has provided, push them into this garment industries. And Amrita was telling me that they saw that place where they were living, like in a 10 to 10 room, there are some 15 women are actually staying in a hostel, and they were struggling every day, and they will be taken in a bus to the work site, and they'll be brought back. And they used to be provided 1 bucket of water, because water is a scarcity there. And she was narrating me, because we were there together in a conference, in an ILO conference in Calcutta, and that was a study she was doing. And I think a lot of things were already being spoken about, and I think the invisibility that we are talking about, but ironically, the census 2011, 450 million migrant, but it says that 70% of migrant of that 450 million are women. I think that is how it's a contradicts. I think because they are not looking women actually, and then the reason they are giving is that one of the reasons that the high number of women are because of marriage. But they should have been also looked into, like, they are also working, they're moving different places and working there. When I see this 5 crore around construction worker today in India, I think they are engaged in various places. I think now the government says around 3.5 lakh crore people have registered under the Building and Other Construction Welfare Board. And then we look at the women where they are now in construction industry. And construction industry, slowly women are actually moving away because the kind of new technology has come, and women, they are unable to work. And many of them, they don't have that safety gadgets. Nobody has designed a safety gadget for them till today. They're wearing the same helmet, which actually they're wearing the same kind of jackets. You see that the women are, men are using the same So we have seen many places. That place doesn't have a crest. That she's working there, and just a distance there under an umbrella, a kid is sleeping there, and she's working on the 3rd floor. The women from rural area, she's coming there, and she doesn't have any kind of basic thing like this. She should go breastfeed a kid there, and this is what. But despite of the fact that we have all the legislation that construction worker, men and women should be given a crest there. At least he could go and take rest, and so this is where we are actually when we are talking about digital India, and where actually women are contributing hugely. And that is one issue that I will say is a highly discriminatory. What happened actually, when this lockdown was declared, it was on 25th of March. Migrant worker would have received their salary after 5 days, that 30th or 1st. That's the day that this was declared. And the women living in a village, she knows that after 1st, the men will get money and he will remit money back to her. And you see what happened. 25th, you declared this. You didn't know that how many people would be there, how many women would be there. And we don't have a database till today. Government doesn't know where they are. And what happened then 40 days after that, you just imagine people have not received their wages, people have not sent money back to their homes, and the entire family back is suffering. So we have a scenario now. There are women who are accompanying men walking down. I think, I don't know, Professor Mohanty, you can tell me after during the partition, how many people have actually walked, and today, how many people have actually walked down. And the government says that around 500,000 people have actually walked down to their villages.
Oh my God.
And that's a huge, huge number, along with children. And this picture would always be there in our memory, that in a digital India, people are working to their villages, and we have actually completely denied them the basic services. Now I'll come to the issue, the kind of sector we have. I have just spoken about the garment sector, where women are actually toiling hard, working hard, but but you don't have actually the kind of support they should be getting and the kind of benefit. And today they are also waiting there, and many of them are actually placed by the government to this garment industries, and also the women, young girls. I know the tribal areas from Orissa, these girls were provided training, and they have gone to different places. That is one issue. Now the homecoming migrants, I think that's a major issue for the states that like Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh, Orissa, Bihar, Uttar Pradesh, and they'll be coming back, and they're on the way. And we are creating the quarantine centers, and the quarantine centers, I don't know how much actually, and there is a provision that the women will have a better kind of a place. We were actually vehemently, no, you cannot do that. Now, don't suspect migrant that they are the carriers of either HIV or they are the carrier of either the COVID. Whoever is working, you remember this girl from Telangana who was walking to Chhattisgarh. She died on the way. And in between many villages she crossed, but she couldn't get medical assistance, are so stigmatized. It's difficult. And now in a villages, when they're coming back after so much of struggle, fighting, and also for many of them are hungry, and they're all coming back. I think that is where I think we need to see how they're going to be provided the support. And after some time, many people may go back to their jobs. Many people may go back to their work. I don't know whether because the trust deficit has gone. I think migrant workers that we have spoken to, they're saying they're not going to go back because they're not treated well at the urban area. They were not treated well because they were working with some of the big companies. They disband them. The government there, because I can tell you, Orissa, the large number of people from Surat, there are 8 lakh people are working and contributing to the economy of that particular state. And also those companies, they're working. But now today, these people are saying that they are actually, when they're coming here, I think they lost the faith. The way they were being treated, they're being actually asked to move. So that is where, and lastly, I would tell you the policy which government have come up just before the COVID, bringing in all these laws together, making a kind of insensitive laws, labor laws, that which will actually, it is called labor codes. 44 labor laws were put together. They also made the women as a worker being completely invisibilized. Thank you, sir. I'll stop it here.
Thank you very much. That reference to the comparison with the to the millions who walked during partition. I mean, the same kind of dreadful memories are coming now. In fact, we will know the details as we go on. And the point about the how the state itself had planned, through the Skill Odisha mission, for example, you have studied that very in great detail. Girls are employed in Bangalore and many other places. Now they are stranded and they are not able to come back. And we had questions about that also. And the stigmatization which has happened is really, really troubling. And how the labor law itself, the legal system is discriminatory against women. I think we have to keep that in mind and really make this as a major point of the women's movement and the union movement as well as people's rights movement, how to bring the women's rights into the new labor legislation. Thank you very much, Umi. Well, I'm sure the panelists are also reading the chat boxes and getting questions. And we will also bring some of those questions to you. But before I do that, there are a couple of people whom I would like to come in briefly and make some 2-3 minute comments. May I request Nitya Rao, President of the Indian Association of All India Association of Women's Studies. Is Nitya Rao there? Hello? Oh, she can't hear me? All right. Yeah, I know some people have raised hands, including Priyanka. Okay, is Rita Manchanda, is she approachable? Rita? No, okay. Then we will ask, okay, why not we start with Priyanka? Priyanka, ask your question. Priyanka, probably they are not able to hear me. Asha,
you will have to unmute Priyanka. Please ask Asha to unmute Priyanka.
Yeah, she has been unmuted.
She's unmuted. Yeah.
Yes, Priyanka.
Yeah. Hello.
Yes, please.
Yeah. So my question is like, though, as the migrant worker, all are coming back to their villages. So what kind of challenges would they face after coming to their villages, as they all have already lost their livelihood aspects, livelihood options, and what would be the situation of women migrant worker once they will come back to their villages? So like apart from Manrega schemes, what other kind of options do they have, and how women migrant workers are going to, what kind of challenges would they face?
Okay, let's take a couple of people and then we can come back. Yeah, who will be the next? Rajesh, you want to ask some questions? No, okay, all right. I think yeah, all right, okay. Asha, you can relay some questions. I will ask you to come in to make your own
No,
later, but you can relay some questions.
the questions have been sent by chat. Everyone
Yeah.
has them. You also have some.
Yeah, all right.
There are Jayati, Pushpendra, everyone. There are some questions. You can see that in the chat.
Bidyut has a question. Okay.
Please unmute me.
Can you unmute
Asha,
Bidyut?
unmute me.
Bidyut Mohanty.
She's unmuted.
But
Yeah, you speak now. You speak now. Speak. You speak
okay.
here. You speak here.
Hello.
Okay, you speak here.
No. Like it.
Okay. Yeah.
You will have to mute yours. Yeah.
Again, it is.
Just speak.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Ooh.
Yeah, speak.
So my question is, but it's creating some sound, and I can't. Yeah. Okay. So can you see me?
No. All right.
Maybe you both can be
on.
on the same audio.
Yeah.
No,
Maybe you
Vidyut,
can
we can
shut
hear
that
you. Please
system.
carry on.
You can
Please
shut that
carry on. We
system
can hear
and you
you.
can be on the same. You can just move to the side and you can. So, yeah, that's
Hello,
really-
everybody. Well, I'm not visible,
Namaskar.
but you can hear me. First of all,
No, you are visible now.
okay.
Yes, yeah.
First of all, I would draw your attention to the role of panchayats. As per the 14th Finance Commission, the sarpanches should do the macro planning depending on the availability of natural resources, and they would match the demand with supply. And now that the migrants are coming back, and it is mandatory for the sarpanches to look after the beneficiaries and also try to, rehabilitate the returning migrants. Now that many of them will not go back to the destination, or they should not, because we have enough resources in Odisha. I mean, fallow lands are there, forest produce is there, and out of forest produce you can food processing industries can start and all those things. So, but I should know, can anybody shed light what is happening in the ground reality? Thank you.
All right. That's a question about panchayats and the long-term planning. that we should do? Well, I think what we'll do now is, because most of you have got some questions, I will collect some and bring to your notice later. So we will, I will first ask now Asha to tell us about, we referred to that garment industry study Amrita and Asha did. Amrita and Asha did this major project, climate change and its impact on gender. So some major findings of your migration studies, which are of relevance today. Asha, please come for about 5 minutes.
I'll just speak a little bit because these migrant workers whom we looked at and whom we spoke to were very young girls. They were supposed to be the age of 18 and above, but it looked like they were 16 and above. And most of them, there were two types. One, those who came under the skill planning, and the skill programs, they were looked after to some extent, though there was no freedom. But the other group had a lot of problems with them. Now, under COVID, those who have been left back, some of them whom I spoke with in Tirupur, there has been, as we thought, as it is everywhere, that there's a huge amount of food insecurity. And that is something that we have been trying to fix from here. But it's something that should be done at the national level. It's not something that NGOs in small numbers, 10 and 15 and 20s that we're doing. That does not solve the problem. Then the other thing is that if we are going to look at livelihood in the post-COVID stage, one of the questions that did go to Jayati also is that these skill building is not helping them. A girl only she makes collars. So that is all she's taught in skill building. So when she comes back to her village, she does not know what to do. That is not real skill building. So what kind of livelihood are we thinking of also in the future, and something that the government has to take into account? I think these are issues that are very important, because these are not only issues of economy, but they're also issues of socialization, that getting involved within the community, which is not going to happen. And many of them are kept it is like bonded labor. You might call it skill building, but it's like bonded labor. So, that kind of system, if it is allowed to continue even at this kind of situation that we are in, is something I think that we need to look at. I won't say more because there are a number of questions to all the 5 panelists. I think if we can ask them to go ahead with some of the questions for Samanthi.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we go back to Jayati, please.
Okay, thank you very much. There have been so many interesting questions, and I mean, it's really very illuminating, a lot of these angles. There are some that I will just take note of, and I think others in the panel are better equipped, and I'll try and answer some of the others. But I think, 2 points that have been made, one by several people, I think Ananga and a number of other people, adolescent girls. I have to confess, I also have been absolutely shocked at the number of very young girls who have traveled alone for work. The tragic story, I think none of us can go to sleep after that terrible image of the 12-year-old girl who was walking alone. But it means that there are girls as young as 10 plus who have gone alone for work. And I don't think even I was aware of that. I really did not expect to see such young girls moving alone. So the particular problems of adolescent girls, I think, who have been migrating has to be definitely taken into account. And it is something many of us have missed, even those who think that we are aware of a lot of these issues. And the other that Kuhu brought out and is very important is the issue of disability. Among the intersecting inequalities, one of the things that we really tend to ignore constantly is the issue of disability. 12% of our population is disabled in different ways according to our census. And clearly, therefore, among migrants also, there will be a significant proportion of disability, what that means in terms of the kinds of conditions they will need and the kind of special public policy that has to be directed to them. I think that's a very, very important issue. I'm not going to take up many of the other questions. There's just one point I want to again bring back that Nandita raised, and I think somebody else had mentioned also, is the issue of dignity. So, you know, what this thing has exposed, I think, more brutally than any of us even anticipated, is the open class character of the Indian state. It has been so aggressively pro-elite and middle class, and so openly disdainful of the human rights of workers of all categories, that I think I never expected to see this in what is purportedly a democracy. I did not think you could get such open and blatant disregard of the human rights of workers as we have observed. And it's not just at the very top, it is of course at the very top, but it extends all the way down, and it extends to our judiciary and to local level administration and so on. So the class character of the state is very important, because it is that which has also added to the loss of dignity. I mean, the way in which everything is done, the way in which policies are formulated, implemented, and then the subsequent lack of any compensatory measures, it's all adding to that complete loss of dignity. And unfortunately, to this is added yet another element of intersectional inequality, which is the issue of stigma associated now with COVID. So in India, we are very good at stigma. We've been doing it for millennia, and we are very good at social distancing, caste, and all of that. So these are all right up the Brahminical patriarchal tradition. So it's ideal, it fits in perfectly. But that's that stigma which is now being accorded also to returning migrants. I think the issue of returning migrants was mentioned, is also something that is an extreme concern. Okay, now I'm not going to talk about all the bad stuff, because we know the bad stuff. Many questions were there on how do we actually deal with this? What do we do about it? What should our national problems? Now, having said what I'm saying about the class character of the state, we should recognize that this is not something that's going to be easily changed. But I still have hope that we are still a democracy. And I still have hope that therefore, all of these things will in fact eventually have to change. That you can suppress people for a while, you can suppress and oppress people for a while, but eventually this will change. So I would say in that sense, I would say that we should have a 5-point program for how we actually address the issues, particularly of gender concerns in migration. First, food security. I think Asha also talked about it. Food security has to be a right of every individual. That is to say, it must be portable and individual, not household-based, but for every person. And it must be portable. It must not depend on where your permanent location is. So we have to work, and there are proposals. I can go to the details, but I think I'll stick to the main point here. That's the main point. There are ways of doing that. Second is employment and livelihood security. And that again has got to be portable and individual. And that means we must actually expand the Rural Employment Guarantee Act dramatically and create an Urban Employment Guarantee Act. It must be for individuals. I would say we must ask for 150 days for every adult. And it must include all kinds of work, not just terribly arduous physical work, but a lot of care activities, a lot of activities that include training for, let us say, local rural industries or for other things, and that include anything that improves the quality of life in rural areas. So as it expands, we could even think of certain kinds of entertainment. Maybe Nandita can give some suggestions about that. Creative industries could be included in this employment guarantee. But we must immediately create 150 days per adult, urban and rural. Third demand has got to be social protection. And social protection must cover adequate health care. I think that part has been very clear. And that healthcare must be given by trained and properly remunerated professionals. We cannot treat Ashas as non-workers. We cannot say that you're not entitled to a minimum wage. They have got to be treated as proper workers with proper conditions and proper training. But in general, everybody, every individual must have access to good healthcare and must also have access to income support during illness. Because given our informal work, and 95% of our workers are informal, you are ill for a period, that's it, it wipes you out. Labor laws, a lot of questions about labor laws. I think it is obscene, the fact that the governments of Uttar Pradesh and Madhya Pradesh have sought to use this absolute devastation of the economy as an opportunity for further attacking the labor force. And so, first of all, those should not be allowed. I wish we could trust our courts to ensure that they would not be allowed. But definitely, labor laws have to be reinforced, not destroyed. This is a period when, in fact, I think, again, it's part of that broader betrayal I mentioned. If after all these betrayals, you then reduce even the legal protections that are allotted to labor, which are already very few and are poorly implemented, then that betrayal will be so large that even this ruling class will live to regret it. So I think definitely reinforce labor laws, including, I think Sanchita had talked about the registration of migrants, and include the fact that migrants have specific rights also in that. And again, by individual, not by household, because that's very important. Otherwise, the gender dimension does not get captured. Finally, I would say that, it's not a specific demand so much, but it's more a recognition of the fact that the treatment of migrant workers, and including women migrant workers, must be given at the same level that the middle class of India expects when they travel abroad. We bring back our middle classes and elites in airplanes. We give them, good treatment there, good treatment here. We're rushing around making sure that we ourselves are all protected and treated with dignity. That dignity, which we expect, must be accorded to every Indian citizen, to all migrants. And particularly when we are ensuring the safety, the protection, the transport, and the mobility of migrant workers, we must pay special attention to the needs of women migrants, whether it is during their reproductive phase, or it is in other concerns about their physical security, or it is in other issues about the lack of language skills in areas where they don't speak their native tongue, and so on. So we must make special concern, basically treating women migrants of all classes the same way we expect to be treated when we travel.
Thank you very much. The 5-point demand, excellent. Food security, employment security, both rural and urban, 150 days, social protection, labor laws reinforcement, and travel facility parity for all. I'm glad you referred to that. UP Chief Minister suspending labor laws for 3 years to facilitate Japanese investment. This is obscene, my God. Thank you very much. Now, next is Saida, please. Saida, are you there or you have left?
Saida had iftar, so she had to.
Okay. All right, Puspendra ji. Yes, Puspendra.
Okay, sorry. Is it muted?
Yeah.
So I will speak from my own experience of working in disaster situations in the past.
Addressing the questions.
Yes, I'm doing actually.
Yeah.
So I worked in the disaster situations like tsunami relief, then several flood relief programs. One thing which I can say from my experience is that all pre-existing inequalities actually tend to magnify during any disaster situation. So whether you talk about gender, you talk about religion, whatever divisions in the society that pre-exist, whether it's a caste, or you are talking about single women, pregnant women, lactating mothers, adolescent girls, sex workers, or disabled women, all these pre-existing inequalities. So what I have been actually told as a relief worker is, look at two things when you think about addressing situations arising out of any disaster. First is to look at the specific impact of that disaster, that's one. And at the same time, also look at the pre-existing inequalities or divisions in the society and address both. It's likely that pre-existing inequalities are going to further magnify, further exacerbate in these situations. So from there, I will come to a specific questions. The questions are, First is about social security. Several people have raised this question. What I see generally, the social security entire structure in our country doesn't help people in disaster situations. It doesn't create any, say, entitlement in disaster situations. I will just explain it. See, this generally, whatever, if you look at the 1.76 lakh crore package or the general kind of a structure of social security in the country, you will find that there is emphasis on three things. One is medical insurance, which is through basically private providers, but that is related to your hospitalization. So there is no emphasis on strengthening basic public health infrastructure like PSCs, CSCs, or say referral systems in the community. So there is no emphasis on that. The second is related to compensation in case of death or in case of disability. So unless you suffer those unfortunate things, you don't get anything. And then the third is related to pension. For that, you have to wait at least 20 years and you can register for pension only before attaining the age of 40. So even if you are 40, if something happens to you today, so there is no assured entitlement. Government may announce. So that means you are depending on the government's, say, response, whether it's a compassionate government or it's whatever kind of government it is, but there is no entitlement. So first thing is that this entire structure of social security has to be, say, reframed in a way that you address today's, say, the issues of security. Now there we have some structure which is continuing from the past, which need to be strengthened, which are quite inadequate. One is related to food security, another is related to security of work. Now this work related security is in the form of only NREGA, which is yet to be implemented properly. We are not even achieving whatever is the goal of NREGA. And then we have to also recognize some of the, say, in these situations, some of the limitations of MG NREGA program. One is that the people who will be coming back, there will be people who are skilled people, those who are work as fitter, those who work as mechanic, those who say work as mason, or those who say operate machines, not or drivers. Not everybody is will like to work in the rural works program. Not everybody's body is trained to actually work. So you have a vast profile of workers, and you have to think about engaging them gainfully. And if you can't, then at least there should be in the social security structure a fallback system where you actually give them unemployment allowances, or in disaster situations, fix certain income, assure that minimum fixed income to people. That has to be brought in as right, which is not the case at present. And then I would say the question which has come regarding what will people going to do immediately when they're coming back. See, what will happen, those who are coming back. And before saying that, let me also say that right to return to their native places should be equally important right. Now, if they return to their native places, what's going to workforce? They will be quarantined. Sure, whether these people are going to come back, because if you are running 5, 10 for one state, 5 trains, 10 trains, how are these people going to come back? Say for 50 lakh people, you have to run at least for 48 lakhs, 5,000 trains. If you are running a train with 1,200 people in each of the trains, it will take years for these people to come back. Now, if they come back, 21 days they will be quarantined. Then there will be the time of paddy sowing. It will have its impact. So that means there will be less availability of work, because there will be oversupply of workers during paddy sowing. But still, this will survive people, help people to survive for, say, during the early, say, periods of monsoon, very early September. After that, there will be very, very difficult period when NREGA will almost stop. Many places will face floods, and you will have a new kind of the problem, which is a recurring problem in many places. So all these are going to happen, and in some places are likely to face drought. We know that every year you have drought and floods, and drought may come early. So we have to prepare simultaneously. I don't see any governments actually serious enough to think about preparing for all these eventualities which are going to compound with our corona crisis. So the governments have to prepare for that. Then regarding return, I just wanted to add one more point. We want to see these female special trains. We are talking about Shramik Special. Where are these female special trains? Do we think that all these women who have migrated singly are going to come in these trains? Are they safe? How we are ensuring them? Or are they able to actually to register whether they will be preferred in these trains by the authorities? They will have their own concerns about the safety, and they would not like to take any bad name. So what is happening to their return? The government should pay attention to that. And then, of course, NREGA, which Professor Jyoti Ghosh has already said, I don't want to repeat that. I would also would like to see that disaggregated data is available from now onwards. We have been raising these questions for the last 20, 30 years, and that we need disaggregated data. We also need these services, OPD services, PSC services, to open and run smoothly. That means all those say arrangements for protection to the health workers, these are of immediate necessity. Particularly during this the rainy period, we know that there will be more problems, health problems, ailments, seasonal health problems. And at present, actually, my fear also, when I am under lockdown, I do not want to be get infected by any common disease. I don't want to have even getting ill because of malaria, where I will go at this stage.
Thank you.
So that's the
just a quick can you quickly answer, is there any hope that Panchayat will be more active in discharging their role?
See, what I see at present, the reports I am getting from the ground, Panchayats are trying many areas. The Panchayat elected leaders, they are more accountable than the leaders at the upper level. So they are trying to do something, but again, the all pre-existing kind of divisions in the society. So the Panchayat leaders may prefer one section at the cost of other. All their prejudices, all their the equations, they are also equally active.
Thank you. Nandita, please.
Well, some of the questions have vanished from my screen. The one that I remember was that there are so few films, because I mentioned that somebody had asked that, will women ever be center stage? You know, I mean, forget about migrant women. Generally, women are not center stage. There are very few stories that have women characters that are led, that are thought out, you know, that are not unidimensional, that don't see them as objects of desire or objectifying them. So there are anyway very few women-centric or women-sensitive films. So we definitely do have a long way. Jyoti mentioned a lot of things that need to happen. My worry is that what is our wish list is one thing, but what is it that we can do? I think there is also very little dissemination of information. And because there are so many people here who are from academia, who are doing on-ground work, how do we bring all that information to how do we mainstream all this? Unfortunately, this has also brought out that we live in our silos. So everyone is working in their little isolated world. And, you know, and I realize this because in being in Bombay, I'm sort of navigating through different worlds, and I realize that they just don't know about each other. So I think it's also important, because only then can you create a desire to be empathetic or do something. I think while it is a very hopeless situation, let's also not forget that many people are coming together, many people are trying to help, many people are contributing, many new initiatives have started. I'm sure all of us have got, you know, many messages and emails asking for funds. How do we volunteer our time? How do we volunteer our skills? And how do we stretch ourselves to give more? I think that kind of message along with the information, if there is a way for all of you who know all of these things, how do you disseminate and get into the mainstream media? Please do look into that. That would also be helpful.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll have to.
A quick question. Because entertainment has got a new lease with homebound population all over the world.
Yeah, online.
And so on. Do you think this will go in the direction of more of the same, more of the mainstream, and the elitist, censored, commercial, dimension, or you are anticipating some change?
I don't think it's going to phenomenally change. I think the medium will change. A lot of people are making, thinking and writing stories now. Post-COVID is a whole different world. How do you respond to that? I mean, I just made a small short film, just a spontaneous thing to respond to, what women are going through in their homes. So I think there will be such stories, but by the very definition, mainstream will always occupy a bigger space. And the only way we can counter is to also support other stories. Finally, we are also viewers. It's a chicken and egg situation. People say, oh, this is what people want to watch. So I think what kind of films we support, what kind of films we watch, also encourages producers to make those kind of films. If there isn't enough demand, it's a pure demand and supply, unfortunately, having gone through that. So I think in media, things will have to change. In academia, things will have to change on the ground. So it's a multi-pronged, as we know. So while it's good to have a kind of a wish list, but a lot of this the government has to do. And someone wrote, in fact, if there is no government will, what happens? But then it's also our role to put those pressures to, ensure that these subjects are alive for a long time. It's not a present. It's like after the pandemic kind of finishes, we go back to our work, we try to build our own lives. We all have our own struggles. We should not forget, because the long-term impact for these people is going to be enormous. So how do we sustain the whole it's not even a campaign, but how do we sustain at least the conversation so that the attention doesn't shift?
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll also have to run. I have a 9-year-old child. As most mothers, we are juggling.
All the
Thank
best.
you. Thank you, Asha ji, for inviting me.
For me, among the questions that you handle, one more I would like to add. In this period, we have seen a great deal of centralization. Home Ministry, Health Ministry, and PMO, and of course the PM cares and PM in person addressing and so on. So, but the reality is not just the panchayats, the state government leaders, the district administration and the local leaders, local politicians and activists and administrative, some officials, they are really handling the crisis on the field. So what is going to outlast the other? Centralization or decentralization? You add that to your question now.
I think we see a great deal of decentralization. People are talking about going back to the Panchayat Raj. Now, this is where the Panchayat are today taking the responsibility. They lack infrastructure, they lack the kind of resources. And finally, government understood, I think those people who are coming back needs some kind of support, which can only happen at the decentralized way. Secondly, I know now the people are coming back. Is that the agriculture would be the focus now? I think that is where we need to see that the pre-monsoon people are coming back, and NREGA, if you can put together NREGA and agriculture and provide the input, and I think that would be one area, and Pushpendra already said there may be some area also, some drought-prone area where things would be difficult. I think that is one. We also see that how agriculture may be brought in again with migrant people, because of the agrarian crisis actually driven them out. Now they're coming back. I think if some of them can be observed. Yeah, there is a question also like ISAP and also I think they've asked Kritika whether this disrespect happened to people at the urban area, particularly the migrants, will they able to go back? look, the distress is pushing them out. There is a distress migration which is huge in India. I think no one wants to migrate. I think there are few people they want to migrate who have skills, who can help. But the distress migration is also a key factor from tribal area, from mostly the remote area people are migrating. I think is also an area where government has to find out. Now, as Pushpendra has said, you have database now. It's generated. Everyone you have, I think government have created a lot of database. I was looking at one district database. They have very good database about which place, who is the person, what is the skill set. So you are generating this data. Now you see that can you reduce the vulnerability of migration, like people are going out. And also, like, I would say the role of women and also the increase, like, when we talk about more water you require, because the hygiene, hand wash, and all these things are also, like, we have started saying that this is where, and only the women will go out to fetch the water. She's more exposed because that, and other will be there. Okay, that's an issue that, and her work, the care work, in addition to that, is a more water will be consumed, and it's a summer. This is again would be a kind of a drudgery which would also be there. And labor law, someone asked us, labor law, we don't know, because the labor law government is bringing some changes because the industry wants certain labor laws to be relaxed so that the ease of doing business they want. But I tell you, in this process, what happened? Now the Telangana Chief Minister is writing to Bihar government, please don't take your laborer. Punjab Chief Minister is writing letter, and Karnataka has stopped the train. You see the desperation. The people are moving back. I think you should respect them. I think they were actually running your everything. They were actually doing your work. And if you disrespect them, I think they may not come. I think already it is showing up. Yeah. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. We will slowly close, and Asha will be the last one to conclude. I will just make 2 quick points. I think we had a wonderful discussion. So we are dealing with at least 100 million people, migrants. The estimates vary from 45 million interstate migrants, or Amitabh Kundu says 70 million to 95 million, another estimate. So let's say about 100 million. They belong to 100 families almost. They affect 400 to 500 million people, 450 to 500 million people, and at least half of them women. And the piece of data which came out, I think Pushpendra gave it, independent women workers number more than independent men workers. You see, now and look at the whole process. The system doesn't take that into account. Not only it is gender insensitive, and this phenomenon is not there. Then you have, I think, a very important suggestion has come out. Jayanti emphasized it again and again. All calculations and provisions must be individual based, not household based, not family unit. Then the male, female, child, they will all be taken care of. This is a very important suggestion which has come up. And finally, I think that disaggregated data we need. I mean, of course, various districts, various states, they are now coming up with local data, and we will have a lot of data, but a systematically planned and collected, statistically viable data system on migration and migrant labor and women migrant labor, I think that is extremely important. I would really hope that some of these ideas will be spread through our writings, and as Nandita said, how these ideas are informed to the decision makers to go mainstream and so on. I think some of you have the access to several forums, your journal, your action group, your research, our forums, and so on. We will carry this forward, and I'm sure this was the best possible tribute to Amrita's memory. Our small DRI initiative acquired this status of this very memorable seminar today. And I thank Asa Hans, I thank the panelists, Jayati Ghosh, Saida Hamid, Puspendra, Nandita Das, Umi Daniel, all of you for really contributing to this discussion very adequately. And finally, now may I request Asa.
Just one.
Vidyut wants to say something
before
Asa.
Please unmute me, Asa.
Say, you are on.
Okay, so, I just tell my from ground reality.
Do it from Manoranjan because it makes a sound. So speak from Manoranjan's.
Yeah, I am. I'm not.
Speak.
So, in this COVID has opened up a new opportunity for women leaders and self-help group women, to come as front runners. In many places, Uttaranchal sarpanches, they rescued two sadhus from being slaughtered. And the sarpanch women, as well as self-help group women, they are making masks and distributing them. And then these women sarpanches, also men. So in other words, it has given an opportunity, it's opened up an opportunity for women to come forward and take the banner of.
Thank you. Thank you. And we only hope that post-COVID will change the course of history. We only hope that. Whether it will be still business as usual and all these inequalities, oppressions, and neoliberal patterns will continue, we don't know. But I'm sure COVID will initiate and intensify struggles over these issues. Thank you very much. And now Asa for the last word.
Yeah, just to thank all the panelists for all the hard work that you have done. It has been a tremendous journey for me, at least for the last 1 week interacting with you. And to get so many people on board, and especially students who think that this was one of they've been sending me chat messages that this is one of the best things that has happened for a long time among all the webinars that they've been attending. So thank you so much to all of you. And I hope, what Professor Mohanty said, that the future will hopefully bring women out of wherever they are into the open and become leaders in their own right, and the domestic violence and other things. And what I think I was struck by Daniel said about carriage of water, it never struck me that so much work goes into, or even carrying water becomes a big issue in their lives. Care economy, of course, does go up. But these are things I think we should carry on. And I would also request people that we look forward that we do your writings, and interacting with you in the future is not the end of the webinar, is not the end for us. You can write to sansrishti@gmail.com, and for those students, I wanted to say, many of them are saying, are we getting certificates? Please write to us and we'll respond. Thank you so much, all of you, for this.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Mohanty.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you.
But at least I got connected.